picture is worth 1,000 words. We've all heard this phrase. Maybe we've experienced a particularly poignant photo or piece of art that stirred in us feelings we didn't know were there. Today, Jesus is creating an image in the minds of his disciples by washing their feet. Not just a picture, but a memory filled with conflicting feelings and all the sensory feedback. As the embodiment of God's love, justice, and mercy, Jesus continues to push the disciples to new levels of understanding, even as he approaches death. There's just so much happening in this act. But first, there are a few things to know. Foot washing in this time and age is a lowly chore even among the servants, a task delegated to the lowliest servant. Jesus removes his outer robe and kneels before each disciple. These are actions that literally expose his head and neck, making him especially vulnerable. This act of kneeling implies subservience in the culture of the time. Jesus is more than just flipping roles with the disciples. He is moving into the position of being a slave. It's really no wonder that Peter is scandalized. Because of the nuances of society in Jesus' time, it's hard to convey the impact of breaking with the classist culture of the honor-shame system. See, everyone here fell in tiers defined by their influence and their wealth, and to shame oneself in a scandalous act had long-standing implications. For Jesus to go against this system was awkward, uncomfortable, icky. I spent some time thinking about this, and the closest modern corollary I could come up with was if the CEO of a high-powered law firm spent time cleaning the toilets in the office in front of his employees. But even this does not fully convey the situation, because in our modern age, we have accepted the notion that no task should be beneath us, anyone. Jesus humbled himself before his disciples, taking the most menial task he could find as an example of how the disciples were to serve one another and the world. Jesus calls his followers to service with humility. But more than this, Jesus, as the incarnation of God's love, models the very level of service and love that he invites on many levels. Jesus does not just humble himself before his faithful 12. He humbles himself before his enemies and those who will fail him. Jesus knows that Judas will betray him, and he washes his feet. Jesus knows that the disciples will flee, and he washes their feet. Jesus knows that Peter will deny him repeatedly, and he washes his feet. Jesus knows that he will be executed, and yet he humbly washes the feet of each of his disciples. Even knowing that he will be betrayed, denied, and rejected, Jesus offers this unprecedented act of service and humility. Then he explains that this lowly act is how we are to love one another. I give you a new commandment, that you love one another just as I have loved you. You should also love one another. When Jesus removes his outer robes and kneels before his disciples in humble service, he strips away all the potential defenses we have. This is the lasting image he leaves with his disciples. I invite you for a moment to close your eyes and just listen. Dear ones, we are all disciples of Jesus. There is nothing we can do that will push God away. Though we may feel unworthy, Jesus kneels before us. Though we may judge others, Jesus kneels before us. Though we may feel uncomfortable, Jesus kneels before each of us. Though we may not know how to serve, Jesus kneels before us. Though we may not know how to love ourselves, Jesus kneels before us. Though we may doubt, Jesus kneels before us. And though we may turn away from God, Jesus still kneels before us. I give you a new commandment, that you love one another just as I have loved you. You also should love one another. By this, everyone will know that you are my disciples, if you love one another.